Okay, welcome to the chapter on rhythm changes. Rhythm changes is a term that's used for a particular song form based on the Gershwin Brothers classic standard, I Got Rhythm. And this typically is a 32-bar song form. AABA is the phrasing on this. So we have three A sections with a bridge in the middle. And typically the song is played in the key of B flat. However, there are lots of other rhythm changes in different key signatures. Duke Ellington's Cottontail in A flat comes to mind. But what a signature aspect of this progression or rhythm changes is the bridge moves to the third of the key. So for in the key of B flat, the bridge starts off with a D7. It's a dominant seventh chord built on the 3 of the key, and then does a back cycling movement through successive dominant seventh chords, resolving back to B flat. So the chord progressions would be D7, G7, C7, and then the 5 of the key, F7. So let's take a look at just kind of the skeleton or the architecture of this piece by exploring the chords in the A section. This is example 1, and we're going to just play each chord in half notes so you can get the sound of it in your head. 2, 3, and... Just breaking this down with a quick analysis, we have a repeating phrase of 1, 6, 2, 5. And on the 6th chord, the G minor 7, sometimes that appears as a G minor 7, sometimes that appears as a G7, functioning as a 5 of C minor, the 2 chord. So it depends on the song. Actually, in a lot of cases, players will play them both ways in the context of one song. So just use your ears to focus in on what the other harmonic player, whether it's a guitarist or a pianist, is playing. And then after that, it moves to the tonic functioning as a dominant chord, the B flat 7, moving to the 4 chord, E flat. And then there are several variations from this point on, but the most common one after the 4 chord, we move to a sharp 4 diminished, which resolves back to the 1, and then finish off that phrase with another 2, 5, 1. Now let's take a look at example 2. Example 2 runs through the bridge. So we're going to start with a succession of dominant 7th chords back cycling to the 5 of the key. So we'll start off with a D chord, which we can play. We can further elaborate on that using 9s and 13s as nice extensions. So here's example 2. A 1, 2, 3, and... Okay, let's take a look at some comping strategies and some different ideas that you can incorporate playing rhythm on the rhythm changes form. In example 3, we have the same progression that we saw previously, but with some different voicings. In this example, we're focusing on voicings on the top 4 string set and the middle 4 string set. This is primarily the string set that you would use to comp behind another soloist or a singer. It's a nice range of the guitar. It's not too high, it's not too low, so you're not going to be competing for any sonic space with any other instruments, with the exception of a piano, and that's a different subject, working with a pianist, but of course that's totally possible. Any of these recordings that feature Tommy Flanagan and Kenny Burrell or Wes Montgomery playing with Wynton Kelly are evidence and proof that pianists and guitarists can coexist harmoniously. But let's just take a look if we were the primary chordal instrument playing through this progression of rhythm changes. And we'll be using some of the voicings that we explored in greater detail in previous chapters. So let's get started with example 3. A 1, a 2, a 1, 2, 3, and... Example 4 offers another approach to some voicings. This time, these voicings feature the root, whereas example 3, those voicings would meant to be played over a walking bass line. Example 4 includes the roots of the voicing, so you may want to choose these voicings if you're playing in a duo situation, for example, without a bassist. So here's example 4, working through the A section of rhythm changes. A 1, 2, a 1, 2, 3, and. Also, we've noticed in example 4 there are a couple of harmonic substitutions in there that are very common and sound really great. If we look through in the first 2 bars here, we have our 1, 6, 2, 5, but as I mentioned earlier, the 6th chord, the G, which is typically minor, is now a dominant 7, which approaches the C minor 7 nicely. And then look ahead into the 3rd bar, we've replaced the B flat chord with the 3 chord, which is the D minor 7. That's a very common diatonic substitution, and that leads nicely into this next cycle of G7 moving to C minor, moving to F7. Then, instead of moving right to a B flat 7 chord, we insert a 2 of where we're going, which is E flat, so we can insert a 2-5. So instead of just going B flat 7 to E flat, we can do a 2-5 of E flat. So we can go F minor 7, notated here as an F minor 9, into B flat 13, and then E flat major from there. And instead of going to the sharp 4 diminished chord, that E diminished that we saw in example 3, we can substitute an A flat dominant 13 for that. And that's a really nice kind of a blues flavored substitution that a lot of people like to use. And then we'll finish off the A section with a 3, 6, 2, 5. In example 5, we have another common variation through the A section. This one uses a chromatic approach moving upward. That's really cool. What we're doing, instead of going 1, 6, 2, 5, we're ascending chromatically using diminished chords as passing chords. So we'll start off in example 5 with a B flat 6. Then that moves to a B diminished, moving up to our 2 chord. And then we can connect up to the 3 chord with another diminished chord, C sharp diminished 7. And then we're home to the 3 chord. And then we can move back down in descending half steps, this time using dominant 7th chords, D flat to C minor. And in place of the F7, the 5, we can use a tritone substitution device, which is a B7 in place of the F7. So example 5 played in time is a 1, 2, 3, and. In example 6, let's take a look at some comping strategies for the B section, or the bridge of this song. So as I mentioned before, this is a cycle of dominant 7th chords in a back cycling device. And because they're dominant 7th chords moving in a cycle 4 progression, we can precede the next dominant 7th chord with an altered chord leading into that, creating some nice tension and resolution. So that's one of the effects that we'll create here. So let's play through it and then we'll talk about it. Here's example 6. A 1, 2, 3, and. Okay, let's take a quick look at what's happening here. So we're starting off with a D7 chord, and we're just playing the upper structure of a D9, which is really nice. 2 different voicings. And then what's happening in bar 2 is we can superimpose a 2-5, the A minor to D7, which would be a 2-5 of G, which is the following chord. That's a very common harmonic substitution that was, all the rage in the bebop era as well as the post-bop era. Jazz musicians and arrangers and composers loved just sticking in 2 5s wherever they could. So instead of just hanging on D7 for the full 2 measures, we can play A minor 7 to D7, and that creates a nice forward motion that resolves to G. So in the context of a 2-5-1, as we know, you can make that 5 chord an altered. So to that end, the beats 3 and 4 of the second bar feature D7 altered voicing. So you have this nice movement from A minor 9 to D7 altered, resolving to G 13 and then 9. Some chromatic approach here into a D minor 9 to G7, so we're doing the same thing. We're going to set up the following C chord with the 2-5 of C, which would be D minor 9 and then G. In this case, we're just adding a little color by adding a flat 5 as an extension. Then in the next bar, we use a move that was a favorite chordal move of Joe Pass's, and that would be implying a 2-5 by playing G minor 9 or C13 sus, however you look at it, resolving to a C9. And what's nice, if we looked at these 4-note voicings, you've got 2 notes that stay the same, the flat 7 and 9 of C7, but then you have some movement between the A and the F, both resolving down to an E and G. So there's a nice movement created there. Then we move up to a C13. Then we have C sharp minor 9 moving to F sharp 9, both resolving to an F9. So what's happening there is normally a C7 would be the 5 of F7, but we're replacing that C7 with an F sharp 7. They share the same guide tones, or C7 up here, share the same guide tones as F sharp 7. So again, that's a tritone substitution device. And the C sharp minor 9 is a relative 2 to the whole thing. So for example, F sharp 7 would normally be the 5 of B, and the 2 of B would be C sharp. So what we're doing is implying a 2-5 of B, but instead we're resolving a tritone away to F. This was a favorite device of bebop musicians and post-bop musicians. Wes Montgomery used this all the time. It's just simply called a sub 2-5, and it's a tritone substitution with a 2 in front of that. And Wes would use it in both his comping as well as his soloing. So that's setting up the following F9. Another chromatic approach here. And then in the last bar, we do the exact same device. We add a sub 2-5 approaching the B flat. So the B7 that directly precedes the B flat is a tritone substitution, or a sub 5 of B flat. That's substituting for the F7. And the 2 in front of the B7 would be F sharp, because normally B7 would be the 5 of E. And the 2 of E is F sharp minor 7. So your ears want to hear 2, 5, to 1. But instead, you're hearing 2, 5, and then something completely different, which is a very refreshing device and a really cool technique that you can use in your comping. Okay, in example 7, we're working on constant velocity, and basically this is an exercise that will help you thread melodically through the changes in a rhythm changes progression or any other progression. This exercise works well with blues progressions or any standard tune that you may be working on. And the idea is to just thread a continuous line without stopping through this progression, and while you're threading through this, implying or directly stating the changes as they occur. And even though the changes move through a 1, 6, 2, 5 and then move into the 4 and all of the various turns that it will take in the context of a progression, you're matching those chord changes with your lines, and also at the same time really identifying some key areas for tension and resolution. Flat 9s resolving down a half step and things of that nature, which are just such so commonplace in the language of bebop. So take your time with this study, but then try to build your way up to speed so that you can really develop your picking and fretting technique at the same time. Okay, in the next 2 examples, we continue to take a look at soloing strategies over rhythm changes. Example 8 explores soloing with the blues. playing blues ideas, using the blues scale, blues licks, everything in your blues vocabulary will sound totally at home in the context of a rhythm changes. Exemplars of this technique include George Benson and Pat Martino, particularly their work with organ trios in their early periods of recording. And just playing blues ideas can really kind of, bring it home in the context of a rhythm changes, so you don't always have to sculpt out every single chord change. You can kind of have a blanket approach of a blues over that entire A section, and that's what's happening in example 8. In example 9, we look at a couple of different ways of approaching the bridge. So again, as we did with comping, we can superimpose some 2/5s in there, some chromatic approaches. There's a lot of chromaticism in this particular example. And just be sure to check out places that invite tension and resolution, particularly in the last F7. Actually, if we look in the last 2 bars of this particular example, the first F7, we're just outlining that F7 with kind of a mixolydian, a very inside F dominant idea. And then we quickly shift to an F altered idea because it's going to be resolving to the 1 chord, which is a B flat 6. So we start off with a real inside idea, and then we move quickly to an outside idea using the altered scale, and then bringing it home, resolving to the B flat chord with an F.